Hey lady, I am so freaking jazzed that you're here. My name is Emily and I am a clinical social worker deeply passionate about what's going on in between our ears. I am here to help build up your toolbox against self-doubt, social comparison, and nasty self-talk to help keep you kind to your mind. You know, we all have something going on in that noggin of ours that isn't always kind. So let's put in the legwork and flex those mindset muscles so that we can move the mountains we were meant to freaking move. Let's go. Honeyhead, welcome back to another episode of the Kind Mind Project. I am so honored to share this woman with you today. Her name is Lindsey, and she has all of the skills in the financial world that I a lot of times wish I had. She is a financial therapist, and first of all, as a therapist, I didn't even know that was an option. I didn't even know that that was a thing. And the way that she frames money and money mindset work is an absolute gift. And you will now get to experience the way that she lights up talking about money. I wish that's the way all of us did. And so today, my hope for you is that as you get to meet and chat with this incredible woman, that you get to take one step further to talking about money the way that Lindsey does. And this is something that I need to learn too. I hope that today we start to change our money story, that we start to speak about money in what it really is, a resource, right? A piece of cloth. And I hope that this conversation sparks that for you. And that later you check in with Lindsey and you say, hey, I think it's time that I do that deeper work when it comes to money. So here is this initial money mindset conversation with financial therapist Lindsey. I hope you enjoy. Lindsey is back.
I am back.
Lindsey's
I'm
back.
here.
You are. And I'm so excited because since the last time you were here, you have shifted a little
I
bit. You've
have.
pivoted a little
Yes.
bit. Last time you were here, we chatted about your book. And we've pivoted into kind of a different season, different focus of life for you and for your business and what you're working on. So fill us in on the money shift.
Yes. So I have become a financial therapist and I am loving every second of it. I always have been interested in like money and finances and math and like kind of the whole thing. And like 7 years ago, my husband and I started getting really serious about just understanding like what to do with money. How do you build wealth? Like what's happening? And since then, I like truly have not been able to like get enough knowledge on it. But earlier this year, early 2023, I found out that financial therapy was a thing, which I had never
Yeah,
heard of before. And I've been in
I
the
had no
field.
clue.
I'm a licensed therapist, as you
Yeah.
know, and I had no idea that that was a thing. And once I literally heard it, I was like, oh my God, sign me right up. And it is without a doubt 100% my calling. I am so obsessed with it. My clients have been so successful. It's been so fun, and I'm so happy to be here. Yeah.
Yay. Oh my gosh. And I'm so excited for you because whenever I hear someone that's just like, this is 1000%, one, I didn't know it existed. And two, this is absolutely what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And to
That's
be
exactly
honest
how
with
I feel.
you, I, the woman listening to this, as well as myself, we are not the money people. We're not the confident money people. And I think one of the biggest reasons why I love having someone like you with your background talking about a topic like this is you come from a therapeutic background, right? You
Hmm.
are a licensed social worker, you come from that therapeutically minded space. And
Hmm.
talking about something that, to be honest, for a lot of people, it makes us shiver a little bit
Totally.
to even chat about. So I'm excited for those two perspectives to
Hmm.
come together. And I immediately went to the woman that's listening to this right now and I said, what do we need to focus on directly? Because we could chat about money for eons, right? Like
Eons.
we could,
Totally. Totally.
it's just, we could chat about it for forever. And so I zeroed in on a couple of different things and I would love to see just kind of where this takes us today. But the first of which is like, how can we really call out some red flags that we might not be noticing when it comes to our own financial wellness, being financially well? What are some red flags that we need to be looking out for that we probably just see as, oh, this is how it's supposed to be. We're just supposed to be stressed about money all the time. What are the big like red flags that you would call out that we need to be paying attention to?
Okay. First of all, I love that you think, or that you said that people think like, oh, this is just how it's supposed to be. This is just how it is. Like money is just stressful. 90% of Americans report that financial stress is occurring in their life, right? And that can mean so many different things for everyone. And that's kind of the hard thing, right? Is like everyone's money journey is so unique to them. And in the broader sense, everyone, almost everyone, experiences money stress, right? And so I think some of the red flags is first and foremost avoidance. So many people go to that place of like, I don't want to even know. I don't want to look at my statements. I don't want to know what I'm spending. And even the thought of like going through your previous, months, 2 months, 3 months statements to know where the money is really going is really, really overwhelming and stress inducing. I know like some listeners right now are probably just like cringing, like, oh my God, it's me. Because it's true. Like, I mean, when's the last time you've really poured over, like in one sitting, your monthly statement? We're so disconnected now from our money because so many of us use credit cards and, that kind of detaches so much. And, that's intentional by the credit card companies. I use credit cards. I'm not one of the people that says don't, but, so I think that's first and foremost a definite red flag is if you are avoiding money topics. If you're partnered and you're avoiding money conversations with your partner, that's a big red flag. And we can talk a lot more about that if you want. So there's a couple different things. Also, another red flag might be your patterns. You might be like, oh, I'm gung ho, I'm doing this, I'm getting it all together. And then it kind of falls off. Right. And then you let that kind of slide for a while. And then, oh, no, I'm going to be gung ho about it. I'm going to get my money shit together.
Yeah.
And then it kind of falls off. Right. And we
Yeah.
have these patterns that we notice. And so that can definitely be another red flag to kind of be aware of.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm so glad you said that because as I was picking her brain as to what our biggest concerns are right now, that of course was like, I feel like I get good about it for a while and I feel like I get really intentional and then it fall off. Right. But
Mm-hmm.
I also am hearing her live in this scarcity related place. How can we kind of kick ourselves in the pants and get us out of that scarcity related mindset when it comes to money? Especially when we're in our 20, 30 somethings, really trying to establish a healthy money relationship. How can we address things like scarcity?
Yeah, I think so much of scarcity comes from these arbitrary numbers that we just randomly assign to things. And this is common with, I'm not kidding, every single client that I have had has almost the same like arbitrary number. And that is we want to make $100,000 a year. That's so common. I want to make six figures. Like that's just like, and there's no follow up. If I then press and say, okay, why 100K? What does that mean to you? What does that give
Yeah.
you? All the things beep, 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 crickets, right? Like they're just like, I don't
Well, I
really
don't
know.
really
Like
know.
nobody
Yeah.
really takes it the next step further because we're not pushed to, we're not encouraged to. It's just like, oh, that sounds like a good number. And fun fact, only 18% of Americans are making $100,000 a year or more. And so, like, first of all, that's kind of a perspective shift. It's like, oh, like it sounds like everyone's making that, and that's just not true. So if you're not there, let that be kind of like oh, that's nice to know. And if you are there, be like patting yourself on the back, like,
Yeah.
great. But to get rid of that scarcity, you need to assign some meaning to that number. And so what I often work with my clients on then is like, let's do some actual hard work of like, what do you want your life to look like? What do you want your Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday to look like? What does that mean for you? Whether you're an entrepreneur, that could mean totally something different every single day. If you're, in the in between where you're like working a full-time job and have a side hustle, if you're just in that full-time job and you're happy there, like I think there's a lot of pressure on having a side hustle now too. So there's a whole gamut. And this is where I say it's like the individual matters just as much as like some of those generalized statements, but you really need to have intention and purpose in what that $100,000, if that is your arbitrary number, which again, it most often is, what that means to you and what does that get you and what does life look like at that number. And then we kind of do some actually, so this is kind of like the woo woo part of it is like, what do you
Yeah.
want your life or some visualization, your goals, all that. And then we put the logistics into action and we reverse engineer those numbers and break it down. How do you get to the number that you actually really need? Like, let's look at your expenses. Let's look at
Yeah.
what's actually going out and getting to really the number. And so often it is not 100K. It's like, oh, I could be making, 60K and really be living a life that I'm really, really comfortable in. And, so it really depends on the person, but that's kind of how you get there. It's just like, you need to be so clear and intentional about what you want your life to look like. That's the first and foremost.
Yeah, absolutely. The other big thing that I was hearing was this idea that, we step into our quote unquote adult years and we're trying to figure our shit out and establish our career and buy a home and all of these things. Meanwhile, we have this relationship with money from our childhood, whatever
Mm-hmm.
we've learned up until this point, and now the money's in our hands and
Mm-hmm.
we have to figure out how to be in relationship with
Mm-hmm.
that. What have you noticed in working with your clients now of their previous relationship with money based on what they were taught or observed as a child, and also how they're relearning right
Mm-hmm.
now?
Yeah, really good question. And it's so interesting because so many of our money habits, almost all of our money habits, are established by the time we're age 7. People do not understand how much your childhood really impacts how you present financially in adulthood. And so I think doing some of that deeper work of like, what did my upbringing look like with money? What is my earliest money memories? What do I remember, my parents saying, doing, acting around money? And for so many of us, it's like we just didn't talk about it, like out of sight, out of mind. Or in a lot of cases, in the home that I was in, if money was talked about, it was fought about. Like there were
Yeah.
always constant fights about money. And so what does that look like and what message does that send to us? And for so many, I mean, that's in part the reason that I took the mental health track, because I remember like I've been one of the therapists that have said like, oh, I'm not in it for the money. Like how many
Mm.
times have we said that as therapists? Like,
Yeah.
oh, I
Yeah.
don't do my work for the money. Like that's enough, right?
Mm.
And the reality is like you can do what you want for money. Like money is not inherently bad, good, or evil. It's just money, right? It's just cloth. And so, yeah, also fun fact, it's not paper, which I recently learned. But no less. Anyway, so I think really truly understanding and taking a introspective look of like, oh, well, that totally aligns. Like I have a client right now, she's doing the work and it's hard because she had, parents that were quite abusive towards each other with their
Mm.
finances. And so she's really trying to be in a very healthy relationship. And it's hard not to break some of those generational cycles. But the reality
Yeah.
is they've been passed down. And so I think, again, it goes back to that intentionality piece of like, I need to do the work. I need to actually do the journaling, figuring out, and have those conversations, like find a financial therapist and talk to them about it, because where else is there a safe space to talk about money? There's not that many of them. So
Yeah.
find those safe spaces and start opening up those vulnerable conversations.
Yeah. And like full transparency, I feel like recently my husband and I just bought our first home. right?
Yes,
And
I know.
in
Ah.
like a wild, what felt like to me, because that's all I know, a wild housing market, and things are
Mhm,
stressful. And there were moments like just full transparency where we were like, we doing something wrong?
mhm,
Have we not done enough to put ourselves in a position where we can be quote unquote successful?
mhm,
Because that's what we've observed for so long. We're supposed to get married. We're supposed to buy a home. We're supposed to be able and put ourselves in a position where we're able to do that. So it was a lot of conversations of like, are we not successful enough? Are
mhm.
we not making enough money? Are we not going to be able to provide for our family due to the circumstances that we were finding ourselves in? And I'm sure that we're not the only folks that are looking for homes and in that conversation right now. So, someone that is finding themselves in a place where money is either tight or they are in a stressful buying environment. And I know that goes into home buying and the economy and all that shit as well. But when they're having that internal story of, I'm not doing enough to provide, and they very well may could be, how can we address that internal conversation that they have going on?
Yes, again, I have so many thoughts to go on this. So yes, you're right.
I
The
knew you
housing
would.
market has been so freaking weird. And so first and foremost, if somebody wants to be a home buyer, I'm a homeowner. You're now a homeowner, so that's huge and congratulations. But that is not the only way to have housing, right? And so
Yes.
really what we need to first do is say, why do you want to be a homeowner? What
Mm-hmm.
does that mean to you? Why is that equated with success? Because it truly is. That's always been, in our lineage, that's
Mm-hmm.
been a sign of success. And really now I would argue, what does home ownership mean versus renting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Renting is
Yeah.
not bad. In fact, it's far more inexpensive than home ownership in a lot of ways. There's these phantom costs that come with home ownership. There's, you're the one that has to replace the roof if it caves in, right? Whereas
Mm-hmm.
renting, you don't have those expenses. Um, there depends on your area that you live, right? So there's so many different factors that go into it. But I think asking that question of why does that mean success to you is really important. And that goes back to a lot of times your parents and your grandparents of like, we wanted to own a home that was success. And now, like, my husband is kind of like that. He wants to be the homeowner. And I'm frankly like, at any point, I'm like, if we go back to renting, I'm cool with that. Like, I don't really
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
Um, but like we've had those conversations. So again, if you're partnered, like have that conversation. And if you're not partnered, then that's something that you really need to again talk to somebody about or do some journaling work on and like really ask yourself that question, like, oh, why? And I would argue again, it goes back to like the example I always use, and this is, on a much smaller scale than like the housing market, but like we are so easily, I don't want to say manipulated because that sounds like harsh, but like buying things through like social media, buying things,
Mm-hmm.
shopping online, right, is so accessible and so easy. And in some ways, that convenience is amazing. And in other ways, it makes us see all of these things that we quote unquote should be having. And the
Mm-hmm.
reality is, there is no should, right? And so the example I always give is like bucket hats. It's like everybody has these bucket hats and people are obsessed with bucket hats. And I effing hate bucket hats. I think they are the ugliest things ever. And so for some reason in my psyche, I'm like, okay, I don't need a bucket hat, right? But like there is something called the mere exposure effect. And it's something that like you could be like, I hate bucket hats. And then see a bucket hat here, see it there, see it on social media, see your neighbor walking down the street wearing a bucket hat. And all of a sudden you're like, I've been exposed to bucket hats enough that now I like them and now I need one. And that is something that is truly innate in us because it's a survival mechanism because we are community creatures. We want to be
Mm-hmm.
around community. We want to fit in, right?
Yeah.
And so that is a way that our brain has like kind of formulated this thing that we can now be a part of. Going back to the home ownership, that's kind of true too. Is like it's group think, it's group mentality. Like in order to have that house or in order to be successful, I need to have that house. And that's
Yeah.
kind of the narrative that's been told. So whether it's a bucket hat or a house, you might need one, you might need the other, or you might need neither or both. I don't know. It's up to you. But like truly, like that's kind of why. And it just goes back to really understanding what it is that you love and what brings joy to you, like a little Marie Kondo on this financial shit, right? It's like, let's spark joy in our lives.
Yeah.
Stop buying the things that are not sparking joy for you.
Yeah. So good. So, so good. I'm
My
like, oh,
soapbox,
I
I
have
will
a
exit now.
I'm like, oh, I have a bucket hat in my closet, and that is probably exactly why I bought it, Lindsay. They're not even cute. Yes, it's a whole thing. But the other piece that you bring in is like this comparison across generations,
Hmm.
right? We have watched our parents and our grandparents do this whole life thing in a certain way
Mhm.
and are now feeling this financial pressure
Yeah.
to be able to do the same.
Mhm.
How, like, yes, we can do the internal discussion of why the hell do I even want this? Why am I telling myself that this is what I should be doing? And at the same time, how do we manage the external pressure that we might be receiving from those other generations that have done it a very specific way, expecting us to do the same? How do we manage that?
I think having those really open and vulnerable conversations again. So if you're getting pressure from, say, your parents or your grandparents or aunts and uncles or what have you, you're getting those maybe passive aggressive questions. I'm from Minnesota. We're king and queens of passive aggression over here. So that is it's a real concern for people, and it's really hard to navigate, but I would probe. And I think really the best approach is curiosity. I've had really good conversations with both of my parents, but a lot of my mom, um, because for so long I almost like resented her for like not doing the work. Like I was just like, I don't understand. Like
Oh,
things are relatively easy to like learn, right? Like when I was like really new at
yeah.
this before I was a therapist, like I was just like, I don't get it. Like I just like,
Mm,
why wasn't this a fascination to you? First of
yeah.
all, it's not that it's not a fascination to many people. So okay, chill out, Linz. But after kind of approaching her with curiosity, it was so evident that like she had so much pressure on her.
Mm.
And like women were not allowed to own credit cards in their own names without their husband's sign off permission until 1974. Like this is new. Our
74.
74. Can you believe that?
Y'all, that is not long ago.
No.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Mhm. Right. 50 years.
Wow.
So most of our parents or
Yeah.
most of our mothers didn't have that, like that wasn't even an option to have a line of credit without their husband
Yeah.
sign off. Okay. So when you start putting in perspective how new some of this
Mm,
stuff is, that's really eye opening, first and foremost. So I think you can show older generations a little bit of grace, knowing like, oh my God. Um, that's just, I mean, when I found that out, I was like, okay, mind blown. But then approaching it with curiosity, like, I wonder why you think that home ownership is so important. Like, can you tell me a little bit more about that? It's saying
yeah.
anything with like, oh, I wonder why that is. Like, it's a very gentle approach to really just probing a little bit more and, confronting the situation, but not in like a defensive way. Like I said, I think that your approach matters so much. And so just asking
Absolutely.
more like, that's just not something I, really
Yeah.
care about, or I that's not something I'm really interested in, or this is something that fascinates me more and I really want to spend my time and money here. Are all conversations that I think you can have. It's just wondering kind of where their thoughts and beliefs came from, because
Yeah.
just as ours came so early, so did theirs. So remembering that in those tough conversations.
Yeah. And it's funny because I just kind of sparked this conversation for myself a few weeks ago in the midst of this whole like figuring out our finances shit. Um, Thinking just about the idea of when my parents had they had me at a very in my brain, a very young age. They got married at 21, had me not long after, right? So I look at 21-year-old me
Mm-hmm.
managing finances and owning a home, and hell no, like I would not. You're right, I would be stressed to all hell to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that perspective of it too, considering where their adult life started, where their big kid financial life started, is huge too. And then I take it a step further, right? So we are in the midst of moving into our first home and figuring all of that out, and hopefully growing our family soon. And I think of the pressure
Mhm.
to have to make sure that I instill a healthy relationship with money with my kids.
Yep.
How can we do that in an age appropriate way, in a way that as they grow, the stress will not be there, but the education potentially could be.
Mhm.
How can we do that piece of it? Because that is totally layers. That man, that's a lot, and a lot of pressure for someone to consider. How do I start that relationship with money with a little person,
With a tiny little human.
with a tiny
Um,
human? How do we
yeah,
do that?
I think it totally depends on where you're at in your trajectory. I think like taking you for an example, right? Is
Yeah.
like you are in the perfect position to now educate yourself and become financially
Yeah.
literate and
Yeah.
really understand what is wealth building? What does that mean for me? What are my options? What's out there? Because now it's almost so overwhelming. It's like, who do I trust? Right? Like
Mm.
like there's some people out there that are like, we're day traders, we're getting rich off of Bitcoin, we're this, we're that. And you're like, oh my God, please don't do that, people. But like then if you're in your late 20s, if you're in your early 30s, if you're even in your 40s, like you have time to like be a long-term investor. And like let me tell you, that's where it's at, right? So if we're talking like wealth and opportunity, that's really where that comes from.
Mm.
We do all have these money scripts that we're constantly telling ourselves, whether it's conscious or unconscious, it's happening. Like you have these beliefs around money, and each of these money scripts are true in some ways and untrue in some ways. So, like, for example, a money script might be like, rich people are greedy.
Mm.
Okay. Some rich people are in fact greedy. So it is true, and others are not. So it's untrue, right? So you need to
Mm.
kind of get yourself into check of like, one, let me figure out where my beliefs lie. Two, let me educate myself on like what a high yield savings account is. Like, where should my money be going? How do I implement automation to make my bill paying easy, to do some of these like truly actionable, tangible general steps that like everyone should have some sort of emergency fund in a high yield savings account, period. That's just a blanket statement that I can say for everyone, right? um, and then really understanding yourself and what you want your life to look like with those little people or little person.
Mm.
And then when they come around, talk about it openly with your partner in front of them and let them in on the secret that like you don't have all the answers. I think so
Yeah.
many of our parents tried for so long to either not talk about it because it's embarrassing or shameful or guilt or whatever, overwhelming, right? Like all these words, really heavy, really loaded words to
Mm.
describe how they feel about money, or they just thought like talking about it is bad, it's wrong, it's we shouldn't do it, and we don't want our kids to hear that. And in our household, I have a 3-year-old and an almost 1-year old. And we talk about money all the time. Like, oh, mommy's got to go pay this bill really quick. It came in the mail. Like, just
Mm.
simple things like that, right? To start
Yeah.
getting them in the conversation. I give her my credit card to pay at the store. She loves giving my credit card to the clerk. Just
There you
little
go.
things, right? Yeah, and it's so cute. They love it. The tap thing to her is like the best thing. Um, but like little things like that, where it's like, well, yeah,
Yeah.
we had, this amount in the budget for groceries this week, and this is what we did. Awesome. I heard a mom the other day, oh my gosh, she had taken her two daughters to Target. They had gotten birthday money
Mhm.
and they were in literally the line next to me. And she was like, girls, I'm so proud of you. We had $60 in our budget. And do you see on the screen here? That's 59. We spent $59 and you have, a couple cents left, and they used cash. So she shot a change. Like she was doing it. And I was like,
Oh,
I am
good
bursting
job,
with
mama.
happiness. Yes. I was like, oh my God. So it really, yes, age appropriateness is absolutely a
Yeah.
consideration. You have to decide, is allowance going to be something that you
Mm.
give to your kid, you not give to your kid, they're going to work for it, right? Like there's different angles on that. So it's really all about figuring out what's best for you. But I think the most important thing at the end of the day is always, always, always tying your money back to your values and teaching that to your kids,
Mm.
right? Like my husband and I value time with each other and with you. And the way we can have more time together is by daddy going to work, or, when mommy's downstairs taking clients, like whatever that looks
Yeah.
like. And so my daughter, she's 3, she wants me to do story time with her. And most nights I'm able to go upstairs right after a client and do stories. There
Yeah.
are some when I have an initial session, I do 2-hour initials. And so those nights I don't get to say goodnight to her. And she gets a little upset, and we've worked on it a lot. But I just tell her, baby, like my work is really important to me. And I never use the phrase like I have to go to work. I always tell her I get to go to work. It's mommy's
Mm,
choice. I get
yeah.
to go and serve these people. It's something that really mommy feels so happy about. And then you and mommy get to play tomorrow. Now we have all this time to play. Tomorrow we're going to do crafts, we're going to bake cookies, right? Like, so making it fun, but making her know that like my values are aligned with like what my work is. And that's really
Yeah.
important to me too. And then sharing how money, fuels that, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that also brings up the idea of most people, and I feel like this is a pretty big generalization, but here we are. Most people come home from work, uh, day job, entrepreneurial life, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
and I imagine one of their first statements is, "Oh my gosh, okay, we're done. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
we're done.
Grab that
We
beer out of the fridge, crack it,
right,
right, right.
right."
Yep,
And so
totally.
I just think of our future children looking at that and
Mm-hmm.
being like, oh my gosh, this doesn't, you mentioned tying it back to our values as a family. I imagine
Mm-hmm.
we also need to do that with the way in which we are earning money for our family.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
How do you all manage that, either yourself or your husband, when you do have a stressful day?
I'm very honest about it. It's like, my husband's very good about if I had a client or whatever, I come upstairs, he's gotten her all ready, and he always asks me like, how'd it go? And he's so like he cheers me on all the time. So I'm very, very lucky in my partnership. But he will say like, and I'll say like, oh, that one was a little tough, or like, oh, today went really well. She made so much progress, and I'm very open about sharing that with my client because, or excuse me, with my kids because on a very high level, right? It's like I never get
Yeah.
into the
Yeah.
nitty gritty, but I always want them to know like whether you're choosing entrepreneurship, whether you're choosing
Hmm.
working, for a corporation or whatever you're doing, you're going to have good days and bad days. You're going to have good moments and bad moments all within the same minute, right? Like it's just
Yeah.
how it
Yeah.
goes. And letting her know, we're really big into like feeling all of your feelings and letting all of that be seen and heard and felt and, made space for. All of that is really important to us. And so I want her to know if I'm having, an exciting day, if we had some really big wins, like let's celebrate those. If I'm struggling a little bit, I'm like, oh, I'm just like stuck on this program, or if I'm whatever, like letting her in a little bit on that and telling her like, mommy's feeling stressed because of X, Y, or Z. It has nothing to do with you, but whatever. So I think just doing that really, and it's practice. And you know what?
Yeah.
We've practiced this since she was little, like little, little, because we were gonna get it wrong. And we had a while to figure out how we wanted that conversation to look. And we're never going to get it 100% right, but showing ourselves grace is huge,
Yeah.
but a lot of practice before it really matters because like I said, one, it does really matter. Like she's 3, so you're like, oh well, she'll probably forget. She doesn't know what mommy's talking about, but
Mm.
she does, and she's taking all of that in. Um, so I think some of that is just how we present and making sure that we're not like, oh, I deserve this glass of wine because I just
Mm.
had such a hard day.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I'm not turning to these maladaptive coping skills just because work can be hard. So I think all of it ties together. Um, but yeah, there's that like running joke that like, oh, mommy's wine is so important at the end. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm totally here for that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So there's a
Yeah.
whole culture
Because
there too. Yeah,
yeah, she is literally creating her own money story right now,
right now.
right? And if
Mm-hmm.
we're learning that when stress happens, because money is this thing that we have to work, 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 work for, and then after we come home from that thing that makes us money, we turn to other things. Like she is creating
Mm-hmm.
that story for herself right now.
And same goes for vacations too, right? It's like I don't want to
Yeah.
vacate my life. Like that's not why we go on vacations. We go on vacations to
Mhm.
experience new things and culture and people and music and views and mountains and all these different things. And so making sure that we're kind of telling that story too is like, oh, we get to go explore
Yes.
this new place. It's going to be so fun. Not because I don't like my life, but because it's fun to look at other places.
Yes.
So
And that statement within itself, I don't want to vacate my life.
mhm,
I don't want to vacate my life. Like I want to create a authentic picture for her
mhm,
of this is something that we get to go enjoy. This
Yeah,
is not something that we are escaping from.
totally.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Again, this is something that I feel like I could talk to you about all day. However, the one thing that I really want to close us out with, I feel like most people, when they go to chip away at this looming money conversation, it's so much information that we don't grow up learning.
Mm-hmm.
We don't grow up being nearly as informed as I feel like we should be. And for someone that knows, all right, I really need to get some education under my belt or to start to address these things that I've been avoiding. What is one step she can take today to be able to do that? Whether it is on the side of education and informing ourselves, or one kind of tactical step she can take to get us in a more financially informed position.
Mm-hmm. It's so funny because my answer on this has kind of evolved as I've gotten like deeper into this work.
Yeah.
But so much of what I think about is like, if you want to learn something new, where's the first place you go? The answer, like 99% of the time, is Instagram, right? You're like going to type in
Mm,
a hashtag, you're going to go on Pinterest, you're going to like look at like resources there. Like, I want to learn how to do my makeup. Where are you going to
yeah.
go? Right?
Yeah.
Finances can be the same thing, but how often are you seeing information about finances in your daily life? You're probably not having those conversations like with your bestie on the phone, like, hey, how much money did you make today? Right? Like, that's just like
Yeah.
not a
Yeah.
thing that we're asking and talking about. And that's good, probably. Well, I don't know. It's maybe not good, but like, but it's totally fine to be like, how's your sex life? Right? If you're like needing like a
Mhm.
boost in your sex life, like you're gonna go follow somebody that probably can give you some of those like tactile tips of like, oh, my
Mhm.
husband and I are in a rut. What do we do? Right? You're going to
Mhm.
go and find those resources, whether it's a book, whether it's following them on Instagram. But I like the idea of actually, a lot of times I'm like, sign off, get off of social media, right? But in some circumstances, I think it's really good. And this is one where you're like, just have it kind of show up in your feed. Find some like
Mhm.
female influencers, or, you know, if you're, I, I just like am all about like women doing women, right? Like we need it.
We do.
So
We do.
find somebody that you align with, like your values, your goals, and how they speak to you and what really aligns, and follow them. Like, come follow me on Instagram, right? And we'll talk about money things. That'll be something that shows up in your feed periodically. And then you start getting more comfortable with it. And that's like the smallest step, right? If you're a little bit more like, I'm gung ho, I want to do this, get an audiobook. Start listening to like money podcasts, right? Like, just try one, just see. It's not always going to be a hit for you. It's not always going to be like, oh, this is it, but maybe it will be. Like, and so I think taking those first steps, it's a lot to ask somebody to be like, oh, you've never had a money date with yourself? I think that you need to grab all your stuff and sit down and just start pouring through it, right? Like, that's a really big first step. And unless
Yeah.
you're like, no, I'm
Yeah.
all about it, maybe not there, right? Like, a tiny little actionable step is to truly just have more money content in your life, because you're probably already spending, we know, upwards of 2 hours scrolling through seeing it. So having some of those reminders in there, like, oh, this is something interesting, this is something new, right?
Yeah.
That's piquing my interest, let me do a quick Google search on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And for the person that is like listening to this right now and she's like, okay, wait, I feel like I'm more of that gung ho person. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it's just we really need to hone in. How can she work with you?
Thank you for asking. Yeah, so I was like, oh my gosh. So I do one-on-one client work. It's like I said, I mean, my success stories have been, I'm just so, my clients are truly the best. Like, I haven't yet, knock on wood, had like a bummer client, and I'm really hoping that continues because it's so
Your
fun.
face just also lit the hell up, by the way, in case you're wondering. It
Because
did.
it's like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, thank you.
Yeah.
I cannot speak highly enough about my clients. They're truly there to do the work, and it's so good. And I'm there to help them. Like, I'm here to, as a guide, but they're the ones doing the work, right? Like,
Yeah.
and it's like
Yeah.
everyone that I've worked with, every single person has come to me, and I always ask my first question. I do a 15-minute free, consultation, just to make sure that
Mhm.
like we are the right fit,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. And really to make sure that I'm understanding their goals and what they need. But everybody meets me with like, I'm just so overwhelmed. It just feels like the one thing that like I'm not in alignment with, or like for my
Mhm.
I work with a lot of like therapists, educators, nurses. Um, and they did have that same money mindset that I had, right? Of like, I didn't go
Yeah.
into this work for the money, but like all of a sudden I'm in my early 30s and I need to understand money, right? So stuff
Yeah.
like that. And now fast forward, they're all using the words excited. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to tell you, like, I have such a big money win. It's like, oh my God, what if you could associate the word money with excited, right? Like, so good. So fun. So yes, I'm doing, okay, all that's to say, sorry, I do
No, I
one-on-one
love
client
it.
work. It's so fun, whether it's like one-to-one or partners. Like I work with partners also, um, which is really, really profound. I love, talking to partners to really have open those conversations, because it's also one of the leading causes of divorce is financial ruin. So, um, that's just another interesting, like, a whole thing. But I am also opening a group money coaching because I haven't had the time to serve all
Ooh.
the people that I want. And so I'm opening up group money coaching. It's a private group and you're able to have full access to me. And I'm doing it for such an accessible rate. I want anybody and everybody who wants to be in there. So it's
Mhm.
29 a month or 299 for the whole year. Starting doors open on Black Friday. So I don't know when this episode's airing, but doors open Black Friday. And like I'm so excited about it because one, as we're like starting this, like my new members especially are going to have so much access to me because I will be
Yeah.
in there answering those threads, answering those questions as often really as they're posting them. I'm going live on Q&As, so if they aren't able to attend the live, they'll be recorded and I will answer, they can post their questions beforehand. I'm bringing in expert guests to share, their money experiences and things, because truth, I don't know everything, of course, like
Heck
you
yeah.
can't, right? So like bringing in other people that have more niche down, like on mortgages, on this, on that. So super excited about that. And I'm just like so happy to be able to serve more and to have people bounce ideas off of each other and know it's a
Yeah.
safe place to be like, this might be a stupid question. Like how many times this might be a stupid question, but I'm gonna ask it
Oh,
anyway, right? It's like
5 million. Yeah.
all the time. Like, no, it's not a
Yeah.
stupid question. And like I'll be answering it, but the other women might have experienced something similar and they can tell you about their experience. So again, having that safe communal place just to talk about money. Oh my gosh, the learning that is going to happen. I'm so pumped
This
for it.
is huge. This
Huge.
is huge because two things. One, imagine if you dedicated the next year
Mm-hmm,
to your financial well-being, like literally the next 365 days
mm-hmm.
to your financial well-being with a mentor who is going to frame it in a way that is therapeutic
Mm-hmm.
versus some expert in the financial world that's going to throw you some numbers and some
Totally.
education,
Mm-hmm,
right? But we're going to be able to dive into the backstory of how we got there and what that money story has been.
mm-hmm.
Oh my heavens. That's so exciting.
I'm
That's
so
so, so,
happy.
so exciting.
So happy. One of my clients just like she did not have any retirement plan. She's almost 40. She has no money in savings. We have just gotten her to the point where she is comfortably going to retire at 65. She's like, I feel so much peace. She's planning her trip, her birthday trip to Chicago. She's like, that is like my dream. I just really want to go there, do a solo trip for myself, like go to the spa while I'm there. Like that is her homework right now. Like that's what I get to do. I was like literally help people
Lindsey.
live their dream life. I'm like, what else would I want to be doing with my life? Like I'm
Oh,
like it's so exciting, and to do that in a group form and like share wins with other people that get it. I'm just like, oh, I have full body chill. Like I'm so ready to like be in there and just like, oh,
and
it's
when
gonna
do
be.
doors open? When does this start?
It starts on
Black
Black
Friday?
Friday.
Okay.
Yep, Black Friday. And so,
All
and that
right.
membership will go, like I said, I mean, the year, if you pay in full in the year, it saves you 50 extra dollars, which is awesome. But like, I'm talking like I've had clients that are like, they were making upwards of 300 plus thousand a year and they weren't doing anything. They had nothing to show for it. And
Mm.
so like now they are investing like over 100,000 a year. They could retire. His wife could retire at any point. She's in a really unsafe job. So it's like these stories. I'm like, oh my God, like we are literally talking about like safety. Like it's like down to
Yes.
that where I'm like,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
huge, right? So and having, oh, I'm just like so happy. So yes, doors open Black Friday, you can come find me on Instagram. You can email me. I'm Lindsey at copingwithlindsey.com. You can find me on copingwithlindsey.com also. And just ask about it. I will send you, we always can do that free 15-minute consultation just to see if like maybe
Yeah.
one-on-one is right for you, or if you want to start with the group and be like, like I want to just see and maybe just do it monthly. Feel like, okay, feel it out a little bit, but start 2024 off on a good note. And that's why I did it Black Friday, because I'm like, start the holidays off really with like a
Yes.
good note of like,
Yeah.
don't get yourself in extra debt over Christmas. Don't get yourself in
Mhm.
extra debt going into the new year and starting off poorly. Like set those intentions, set that vision now, and like let's freaking kill it because we're ready. Like we're doing it, and
Yes.
it's gonna be so
Yes,
fun in
yes,
there.
yes. Y'all are
Yeah.
not going to want to miss it. I am going to put all the info down in the show notes. Of course, you can head over and chat with Lindsey, but all the info will be down there as well. I cannot thank you enough for chatting with us, especially with a topic that tends to be high stress, and let's just not talk about it at all. So
Mhm.
thank you for helping us chip away at it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me back. I love your
Of
podcast. I
course.
love you. I love your podcast. Like
I
you're
love
crushing it
you.
out there. So I'm so happy to be
Thank
here.
you.
And yes, thank you for your time.
All right. Well, everybody go check out Lindsey, and let's get in that group coaching program, shall we? Yeah.
Woo.
Dude, thank you so much for including the kind mind and this freaking weirdo in your growth journey. If you connected with today's episode, I would love to hear about it. So slide on over into my Instagram DMs at Emily and the Kind Mind and let a girl know. Okay? But until then, I will talk to you very soon. I love you so much, and you stay kind to that freaking mind.